Hello, welcome to JPS Football. We're doing our AFC North preview. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first listen, we're doing all the divisions, so feel free to check them out. Rich, let's jump right into it. I don't know where to start because this is got to be one of the more balanced and competitive divisions we're going to talk about today. So we'll just start with everybody's favorite Pittsburgh Steelers. What is your take on them?
A good defense, in my opinion, a washed-up quarterback, a very good receiving room, and an exciting young rookie in Najee Harris. So their season could go one of two ways. But the trend in the NFL is when you have an aging guy at that position, it doesn't end well in the second half of the year. So I am going to give the Pittsburgh Steelers an admirable record of 8-9. I think they're going to compete. They're certainly not slugs. But I do think that given the age of the quarterback, and when you compare him to the other dudes in the division, it's going to hold back the team, similar to how his poor play in the final 6 weeks held them back last year. I got Pittsburgh going 8-9. Sorry, Megan. I know that you're a Steeler fan, and no one's perfect, huh?
And Miss Cindy, too.
Oh, that's right. I think Miss Cindy does like them. I don't think she's a big fan of Big Ben, but, I mean –
most women aren't. Anyways, not if you go to the bar. And let's get back to football, of course. The Steelers. So you're down on them. Most predictions I've seen have them a little bit.
If it was still the 16-game format, I'd give them 500 record. It's not. Okay. 8-9.
So they failed to address the position of need, which is, in your opinion,
quarterback. And I also think that the O-line is not as good as it once was. And the Browns kind of exposed them in that playoff game last year.
They sure did. And let's talk about those Browns because big on the Browns. I think that they have maybe the best roster as far as balance. I know people are going to argue because Baker Mayfield is not fucking with the elite quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But I think he's good enough, and the talent around him, and when you look at the explosiveness of their defense, they, to me, got to be one of my top contenders.
It's funny because when the Rodgers saga was going on, there was a hypothetical trade threw up by Max Kellerman at the time that suggested that Green Bay was to trade Aaron Rodgers to Cleveland for Baker Mayfield. I assume there'd be some picks somewhere in there. For Cleveland to win right away and for the Packers to have a contingency plan with a young guy. Max said it was a horrible trade because Cleveland already could win with Mayfield, and I agree. They have a two-headed monster in the form of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Hunt being the pass catcher, Chubb being just a beast in between the tackles. I really like their receiving room. They lost Odell last year, and guys stepped up, guys like Peoples-Jones. Landry was able to make it through the season. I think that this particular year, Odell does something that he hasn't done in a very long time, which is just play out the whole season. I think he's back. I think he's motivated. I don't necessarily think that he wants to finish in Cleveland, but I think that he wants to get back to his stature of being that expected Pro Bowler. I don't view Cleveland's offensive attack as pass heavy. It's the opposite. It's run heavy. I think the run opens up the play action. But I really like these guys to win the division with a very impressive mark of 12-5.
Wow. And I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure about the numbers as far as overall record because it's such a
tough
week-to-week thing. But I want to know because not everyone's as high on them as we are. What is the weak point? Is it just Baker not being the dude quite, or like what's the weakness of this team?
I don't see too many weaknesses. I think this is a team that could potentially find themselves in the Super Bowl. They play in a place where the kind of attitude they have, the smash mouth offensive attitude, not afraid to pass, but high percentage attempts. I think it plays right into their region, their brand of football. And as the weather gets shittier, I think that defense is going to get nastier. Led by Myles Garrett. They got a damn good defense.
And you're not alone in that, though. I did see one other mainstream.
They picked up Clowney, too.
Yeah, they sure did. I saw one other mainstream pundit picking them to make it to the Super Bowl. I got to ask you, I know in one of our other shows we talked about the NFC North and who would be representing the NFC. Are the Browns it for your AFC pick, or are we going elsewhere for that one?
We're going elsewhere, but I do think they're close.
All right.
I have them in the AFC title game.
There you go. So that would be disappointing news, most likely, for the Baltimore Ravens, let's talk about them real quick. Are they going to be your competition for the Browns in that AFC title game, or are we going somewhere else?
I got them finishing a game worse than the Browns. The difference in that division is that I got the Browns beating them twice. I feel that Lamar Jackson, while he's a phenomenal athlete, and he does have a little more help this year on offense, but they're getting off to a very ugly start.
The running backs.
Yeah, they're down 2 running backs already. Todd Gurley was worked out about a month ago. I heard Le'Veon Bell's name come up recently. Normally when things like that happen, it seems like the latter is the one who's going to come in. So I would assume that would be Le'Veon. I'm sure Le'Veon would have an energized feel to get back at the Steelers, being that Baltimore is their most hated rival, at least based on recent history.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy Watkins, nice little addition to help out Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews is a hell of a tight end.
Is that enough? Is that the shortcoming here? I feel like, especially given the running back situation, they haven't quite given Lamar the weapons
and what
to
does
take his
that
passing
mean?
game up.
That means that Lamar's going to have to run a lot more than people probably wanted him to. I love Lamar as an athlete, as a fantasy player. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he can't make the throws. He's done some sensational stuff, but I still don't see him as the upper echelon answer in terms of getting them to the next step. They did win their first playoff game last year against Tennessee. He had a shit game against Buffalo. I don't like them to win the division, but I do like them good enough to get into the playoffs and still sport a pretty good record. I've got them just a game behind the Browns, too. If you base it on my tiebreaker, I got the Browns beating them twice. I have them going 11-6 and being one of the 3 AFC wildcards.
And despite having a lot to talk about, we're moving it along quite nicely. Let's wrap it up with Cincinnati. The Bengals, the return of Mr. Burrow, Joe Burrow. Was that like a standing ovation at preseason for his 3 snaps or whatever? Quite a welcome.
You in the offseason nailed a prediction that Jamar Chase was going to get drafted by this team, which ended up coming to fruition. I absolutely hate that move for one reason. Not because Jamar Chase isn't going to be great or at minimum good. It's because after losing your franchise quarterback, the kid that you're going to build your future around, they did not get themselves that upper echelon lineman, and they were in position to. Oddly enough, I didn't mention him when we did talk about the Lions, because who wants to talk about the Lions? But Penny Sewell, who the Lions drafted, in my opinion, should have been the pick for the Bengals. I think when you're building from the ground up and you get a nice new young quarterback that you feel can take you to the next level in time, you got to protect him. Burrow's season ended on poor protection in the O-line. I don't think they improved there. I don't feel very good about Joe Mixon. And I'm not 100% sure that Chase is going to totally lead that receiving room. I still think T. Higgins might be the dude. It's questionable at best who's going to get the majority of the catches. This team is competitive to a level, but they still have too many holes for me to take them too serious. I got the Bengals going 5-12. I don't think they'll feel as bad as the record looks because I do think that they'll compete against their division rivals to a level. They'll fight. But in that division, they can go 0-6. And it's not far-fetched. I think they'll figure out a way to at least get one division win. I'm going to go 1-5 in the division. But I got them only going 5-12. And I don't think it's going to be like a hopeless feel in Cincinnati. It's just they're going to realize that they still got a lot of work to do. Hopefully the kid stays healthy.
It's fair. My thing is, I liked at the time and still do the Jamar Chase pickup because there's familiarity and
that goes a long way.
A high ceiling on talent and explosiveness. So when you look at what happened last year, Joe Burrow was having to make too many damn plays for them to be competitive.
Right.
When you have a stud player like a Jamar Chase, you have someone else building and breaking tackles and making those plays so that it's not all on Burrow. You can run a wide out screen and see Chase down the sideline for 6 and nothing that Burrow has to do other than make a screen pass, which more difficult than people think, but you know what I mean. Whereas the O-line is more than one player, especially a rookie, because very few rookies can step in and be an elite level player. Even look at the Bucs, their situation with Tristan Wirfs. It took him about half the season to get his feet. And Cincinnati's got more gaps than that. So I still say, like, I understand your reasoning. You want to protect your franchise quarterback, but they're more than one draft pick away from fixing their O-line, whereas giving him that weapon will allow him to do some different things with the ball that aren't him having to scramble and make plays so much.
I just think my fear with that kid is that I don't want him to turn into another David Carr. That's what concerns me after seeing the way he got battered last year. But time will tell. And I think the reason why I emphasized why that offensive lineman, and that particular one I named, was so important is not just because of a young quarterback. I also take into account the division they play in. And they play in my opinion, the closest example of a throwback football division in terms of physicality.
Well, and the funny thing is, I was going to go on that same thing. Based on the division they're in, the quarterbacks remain reasonably healthy, especially given the physical nature of that division and the play style. Lamar takes a lot of hits, and yet the games he missed last year, I believe, were for COVID,
I think my explanation, though, would be that those other teams have superior O-lines because the only one to get hurt was indeed Burrow last year. But time will tell. I mean, anybody could get hurt on any play.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to say, oh, it's because of the O-line. No, guys get hurt all the time.
When the David Carr thing comes up, I always think that was a different era. It wasn't the slobber knockers of before, but the quarterbacks were taking more hits in the pocket, which if you think about where injuries happen, it's in the pocket or on scrambles. Not so much the design QB runs, because when you got an active runner, they're squaring up, they're ducking down, they're expecting contact, whereas when they're in the pocket, they're vulnerable, and that's why all these rules have changed. So, you know, I do think Burrow is able to maintain his health a little better, but I do take your point. AFC North, hell of a division to watch this season, so we'll be watching that with you guys. Let us know if you agree with our predictions. Tell us what you think. And, of course, as always, follow us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTubes, wherever you like to interwebs, we're there. So until next time, we'll talk to you then.